The year was 1924. Sunlight streamed through the lace curtains of a modest but cozy home nestled in the English countryside. Inside lived the Abernathy family. Mr. and Mrs. Abernathy were simple folk, and their two children were their pride and joy. Thomas, a mischievous boy of 7 with a shock of unruly brown hair, and his younger sister, Lily, a sweet, gentle girl of 4 with bright blue eyes that sparkled with innocence. Lily adored her doll, Agnes. Agnes wasn't a fancy doll. She was made of simple cotton with button eyes and yarn hair. Mrs. Abernathy had sewn her for Lily when she was born. Agnes went everywhere with Lily. She sat at the tea parties Lily held for her stuffed animals. She listened patiently to Lily's whispered secrets. She even had her own special spot in Lily's bed. The Abernathy home, while small, was filled with warmth and laughter. The walls were painted a soft yellow, and framed family photos adorned every surface. The scent of freshly baked bread often wafted from the kitchen, courtesy of Mrs. Abernathy's tireless efforts. In the garden, roses climbed the walls, their fragrant blooms adding a touch of color to the scene. Thomas, despite his affection for his sister, often teased Lily about Agnes. He'd hide the doll in silly places, like inside the grandfather clock or perched on top of the kitchen cabinet. Lily would shriek with mock frustration, but secretly she loved the game. She knew Thomas would always return Agnes to her, usually with a sheepish grin. One sunny afternoon, Mr. Abernathy decided it was time to take a family photograph. He set up his camera on a tripod in the garden, arranging everyone carefully. Mrs. Abernathy stood proudly beside him, while Thomas and Lily sat on a small wooden bench. Lily clutched Agnes tightly in her arms. As Mr. Abernathy prepared to take the picture, Thomas, unable to resist one last playful jab, pointed dramatically at Agnes, his eyes twinkling with mischief. Click! The moment was captured forever. A playful brother teasing his loving sister and her doll. Little did they know, that simple photograph would hold a secret, a silent story waiting to be unearthed a century later. The Abernathy house held many secrets in its walls, but Agnes held a secret too. A secret that she would keep safe for a very long time. The house, the children, and the doll were ready for their long adventure. The photograph itself was a product of its time. It was a black and white print, developed in Mr. Abernathy's makeshift darkroom in the attic. The edges were slightly blurred, a testament to the limitations of the technology. But despite its imperfections, the photo captured the essence of the Abernathy family. Mr. Abernathy had carefully posed everyone to create a pleasing composition. Mrs. Abernathy, with her kind smile and neatly pinned hair, stood tall and proud. Thomas, though caught in a moment of playful mischief, still managed to look dapper in his short trousers, suspenders, and collared shirt. Lily, the star of the show, sat serenely with Agnes, her small hands protectively wrapped around the doll. The children's clothing further reflected the era. Thomas wore sturdy leather shoes and thick woolen socks, perfect for running and playing outdoors. Lily's dress was made of a light cotton fabric, adorned with delicate lace trim. Agnes, of course, was dressed in her own miniature outfit, a simple frock sewn from scraps of fabric. The photograph wasn't just a snapshot in time. It was a window into the past. It offered a glimpse into the lives of the Abernathy family, their values, and their relationships. It captured a moment of pure joy and innocence, a moment that would be cherished for generations to come. After the photo was taken, Mr. Abernathy carefully placed it in a photo album, alongside other cherished family memories. The album sat on a shelf in the living room, a silent guardian of the Abernathy family history. It was often brought out on special occasions, allowing the family to reminisce about the past and share stories with each other. As the years passed, the photograph faded slightly, its colors becoming muted. But the image itself remained clear, a testament to the enduring power of memory. The playful glint in Thomas's eye, the serene expression on Lily's face, and the simple charm of Agnes, all were preserved for posterity. The Abernathy family grew, changed, and moved on with time, but the photo remained a constant reminder of their roots, their love, and the simple joys of childhood. The photo and the memory would last forever, waiting for someone to find it and relive the joy. A century, 100 years. That's how much time passed. The Abernathy family home, once filled with laughter and the scent of baking bread, stood silent and empty for many years. Families came and went, each leaving their own mark on the old house. The walls were repainted, the furniture was replaced, and the garden was redesigned countless times. But the house retained a certain charm, a whisper of its past. Finally, a young couple, Emily and David, purchased the property. They were drawn to its history and its potential. They envisioned a cozy family home where they could raise their son, Ben. They loved the idea of breathing new life into the old house while still honoring its past. Emily, a talented architect, had a vision for the garden. She wanted to create a space that was both beautiful and functional, a place where Ben could play and where they could relax and entertain. She hired a team of landscape architects to help her bring her vision to life. The plans called for a complete overhaul of the existing garden, including the removal of overgrown shrubs, the installation of new flower beds, and the creation of a paved patio area. The garden renovation began in the spring. The workers arrived with heavy machinery, ready to transform the overgrown space into Emily's dream garden. They started by clearing away the existing vegetation, carefully removing bushes and trees. As they dug deeper into the earth, they began to unearth long-buried objects. Old tools, broken pottery, and rusty nails were all brought to the surface, tangible reminders of the house's past. Emily and David were fascinated by the discoveries. They carefully collected each artifact, wondering about the stories behind them. They imagined the people who had used these objects, the lives they had lived, and the dreams they had held. They felt a growing connection to the past, a sense of responsibility to preserve the history of the house. But the biggest surprise was yet to come, buried deep beneath the roots of an old rose bush. A surprise that would connect them to the Abernathy family in a way they never imagined. The house was waking up, ready to tell its tale. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. The sun was shining brightly, and a gentle breeze rustled through the trees. The workers were focused on removing the last of the old rose bushes when one of them shouted, "I think I found something." Emily rushed over, her heart pounding with anticipation. There, nestled among the roots of the rose bush, was a doll. It was old and worn, covered in dirt and grime. One of its button eyes was missing, and its yarn hair was matted and tangled. The cotton fabric of its dress was faded and torn. Despite its condition, Emily immediately recognized it as a doll. But this was not just any doll, this was Agnes. After being buried for almost 100 years, the doll had returned to the world. The doll looked like it had been through a lot. The dirt had stained the fabric. Patches of the dress were missing. It had seen better days, but it was finally back. "Be careful with it," Emily said to the worker, her voice filled with concern. "It's very old." The worker gently lifted the doll from the ground and handed it to Emily. She carefully brushed away some of the dirt, revealing the doll's faded features. Emily held the doll in her hands, feeling a strange connection to it. She wondered about its history, about the child who had loved it, and about the circumstances that had led to its burial in the garden. She knew in that moment that this doll was more than just an old toy. It was a piece of history, a tangible link to the past. The doll had a story to tell. "Wow, what is that?" said David as he arrived. "I think this might be something special," replied Emily. "We need to find out more about it." They carefully placed the doll in a box and took it inside the house. They knew that they had found something truly remarkable, something that would change their understanding of the house and its history forever. The house was ready to tell its story, and Agnes had arrived to help tell it. Once inside, they carefully examined Agnes. Years underground had certainly taken their toll. The once bright cotton dress was now faded to a pale, almost ghostly white. The fabric was fragile, with several tears and holes. Dirt was ingrained in the fibers, making it difficult to see the original pattern. One of the doll's button eyes was missing completely, leaving an empty socket that gave Agnes a slightly forlorn expression. The remaining button eye was cloudy and scratched. The yarn hair, once neatly styled, was now a tangled mess of knots and dirt. Some of the yarn had even come loose, leaving bald patches on Agnes's head. The doll's body was misshapen, likely due to the pressure of the earth over the years. It felt stiff and brittle to the touch. Emily noticed that some of the seams were coming undone, revealing the stuffing inside. The stuffing itself seemed to be made of old rags and scraps of fabric. Despite its dilapidated condition, there was something undeniably charming about Agnes. It was clear that she had been well-loved and cherished in her time. Even with missing button eyes and stained clothes, her gentle nature was still visible. "She's really been through it," Emily said softly, running her fingers gently over the doll's faded dress. "She must have been someone's favorite," David added, examining the doll's misshapen body. "I wonder how she ended up buried in the garden." Just then, Ben came running into the room, eager to see what his parents had found. "Wow, what's that?" he exclaimed, his eyes wide with curiosity. "Is it a really old doll?" Ben loved old things. "It is," Emily replied, carefully handing the doll to Ben. "We found her in the garden. Be very gentle with her. She's very delicate." Ben took the doll with reverence, carefully turning it over in his hands. He looked at the missing button eye, the tangled hair, and the faded dress. "She's amazing," he said, his voice filled with awe. "Can we keep her?" The doll was about to start a new adventure. "Of course, we can keep her, Ben," Emily said, smiling at her son's enthusiasm. "But we need to be very careful with her. She's very old and fragile." Ben nodded solemnly, clutching Agnes tightly in his arms. He spent the rest of the afternoon examining the doll, marveling at its age and wondering about its past. He imagined all sorts of stories about Agnes, about the child who had loved her, and about the adventures they had shared. That evening, after Ben had gone to bed, Emily and David sat down to do some research. They wanted to learn more about the history of the house and the families who had lived there. They searched online, consulted local historical societies, and even visited the local library. They discovered that the house had been built in the early 1900s and had been home to several different families over the years. They found old photographs and documents that shed light on the house's past. They learned about the Abernathy family, the family that had lived in the house during the 1920s. They saw photos of Thomas and Lily. As they were looking through the photos, Emily suddenly gasped. "David, look at this," she exclaimed, pointing to a photograph of Lily holding a doll. David leaned closer to examine the photo. "That's Agnes," he said, his eyes widening in surprise. "It's the same doll we found in the garden." They stared at the photograph in disbelief. It was a clear match. The doll in Lily's arms was undeniably Agnes. The pieces were beginning to fall into place. "This is incredible," Emily said, her voice filled with excitement. "We have to find out more about the Abernathy family." They continued their research, determined to uncover the story behind Agnes and her connection to the Abernathy family. They knew that there was more to the story than they had initially realized. The doll and the family were now intertwined. They were ready to uncover the mystery. The next day, Ben was playing with Agnes when he noticed something strange. Ben was carefully turning Agnes over in his hands when he said, "Mom, look, this seam is coming undone." He pointed to a small area on the doll's back where the stitching had come loose, revealing a gap in the fabric. Emily came over to examine it. "You're right, Ben," she said. "It looks like it's been like that for a while. Can we open it up?" Ben asked, his eyes filled with curiosity. "Maybe there's something inside." Emily hesitated. She didn't want to damage the doll any further, but she was also intrigued by the possibility of finding something hidden inside. "Let's be very careful," she said. "We don't want to tear the fabric." She carefully took a pair of small scissors and began to gently snip the loose threads of the seam. Ben watched with bated breath, his eyes fixed on the opening. As the seam opened wider, Emily reached inside and carefully pulled out a small, folded piece of cloth. It was made of a thin, delicate material, and it was yellowed with age. "What is it?" Ben asked, his voice barely a whisper. Emily carefully unfolded the cloth, revealing a small message sewn onto it. The stitches were small and neat, and the message was written in a childlike script. They could barely make it out. "I can't believe it," Emily said, her voice filled with wonder. "There's a message inside." They carefully laid the cloth on the table and leaned closer to examine it. The message was simple, but it was filled with emotion. It was a message from the past, a secret that had been hidden inside Agnes for nearly a century. The message was waiting to be read. "What does it say, Mom?" Ben asked, his eyes wide with anticipation. Emily took a deep breath and began to read the message aloud. The room fell silent as the words of the past filled the air. The Abernathy secret was about to be revealed. The doll had kept the secret safe for so long. It was time to share it. Emily began to read, her voice soft and reverent. "Dear Lily," the message began, "I'm sorry for teasing you about Agnes. She's a very good doll, and I know you love her very much. I love you too, Lily. From your brother, Thomas." A wave of emotion washed over Emily as she read the simple words. She looked at Ben, who was listening intently, his eyes wide with wonder. David put his arm around Emily. "That's so sweet," Ben said softly. "He loved his sister very much." "He did," Emily replied, her voice thick with emotion. "And he wanted her to know it, even if he sometimes teased her." The message was a testament to the enduring power of sibling love, a reminder that even the smallest gestures can have a lasting impact. It was a glimpse into the lives of Thomas and Lily Abernathy, a window into their hearts. "Do you think Lily ever knew about the message?" Ben asked. "I don't know," Emily said. "Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. But I think it's beautiful that Thomas wanted to leave her this message, just in case." They carefully folded the cloth and placed it back inside the doll. They knew that they had discovered something truly special, something that would forever change their understanding of Agnes and her connection to the Abernathy family. "What should we do with it, Mom?" Ben asked. "I think we should keep it safe," Emily said. "We should preserve it and honor the memory of Thomas and Lily." They decided to frame the photograph of Lily holding Agnes, alongside the small piece of cloth with Thomas's message. They hung it on the wall in Ben's room, a constant reminder of the love between a brother and sister and the enduring power of the past. Agnes had finally shared her secret. The house was sharing its past. The Abernathy family had been remembered. They were no longer forgotten. The garden held one more secret. It was time to find out what that was. Fueled by their discovery, Emily felt a renewed sense of responsibility to learn everything she could about the Abernathy family. She spent hours online, poring over genealogical records, census data, and old newspaper articles. She wanted to know what had become of Thomas and Lily, and whether they had ever known that their childhood home was still standing, still holding onto their memories. She discovered that Thomas had gone on to become a teacher, dedicating his life to educating young minds. He had married and had children of his own, carrying on the Abernathy name. Lily had become a nurse, caring for the sick and injured with compassion and kindness. She had never married, but she had a fulfilling life surrounded by friends and family. Emily also learned that the Abernathy family had eventually sold the house in the 1950s, moving to a different part of the country. She wondered if they had ever regretted leaving their childhood home, if they had ever missed the garden where Agnes had been buried. As she delved deeper into the Abernathy family history, Emily stumbled upon a website dedicated to preserving old photographs. She searched for the Abernathy name and was thrilled to find several images of Thomas and Lily. One photograph in particular caught her eye. It was a close-up of Thomas, taken later in his life. His hair was graying, and his face was etched with wrinkles, but his eyes still twinkled with the same mischievous spark that Emily had seen in the photograph of him pointing at Agnes. Emily felt a surge of emotion as she gazed at the image. She felt like she knew Thomas, like she had somehow been transported back in time to meet him. She imagined him as a kind and gentle man, a loving husband and father, a dedicated teacher. She also found a photograph of Lily taken around the same time. Her hair was neatly styled, and her smile was warm and inviting. She looked like a woman who had lived a full and happy life, a woman who had made a difference in the world. Emily printed out the photographs and added them to the frame alongside the photograph of Lily with Agnes and Thomas's message. She wanted to create a lasting tribute to the Abernathy family, a reminder that their lives had mattered, that their memories would live on. The lost were found. The forgotten were remembered, all because of a doll. The garden still held one more secret. The time was coming to reveal it. The garden renovation continued, but Emily's focus had shifted. While she still wanted to create a beautiful and functional space, she now also wanted to honor the history of the Abernathy family and the story of Agnes. She decided to incorporate elements of the past into her garden design. She planted roses, reminiscent of the rose bushes that had once climbed the walls of the house. She installed a small wooden bench, similar to the one that Thomas and Lily had sat on in the photograph. One afternoon, while the workers were digging near the old well, they unearthed something unexpected. It was a small, wooden box buried deep beneath the surface. Emily rushed over, her heart pounding with anticipation. She carefully lifted the box from the ground and brushed away the dirt. It was old and weathered, but it was still intact. She opened the box, revealing its contents. Inside, she found a collection of small, personal items: a tarnished silver locket, a dried flower, and a small, handwritten letter. The letter was addressed to Thomas, from Lily. Emily carefully unfolded the letter and began to read. "Dear Thomas," the letter began, "thank you for the message you left inside Agnes. It made me so happy to know that you love me, even when you're teasing me. Agnes is my best friend, and I will always cherish her. I love you too, Thomas. From your sister, Lily." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she read the letter. It was a confirmation that Lily had known about Thomas's message, that she had appreciated his gesture of love. It was the missing piece of the puzzle, the final chapter in the story of Thomas and Lily. She carefully placed the letter back inside the box, alongside the locket and the flower. She knew that she had found something truly precious, something that would complete the tribute to the Abernathy family. Emily decided to create a small memorial garden near the old well, a place where people could come to reflect on the story of Thomas and Lily and the enduring power of sibling love. She placed the wooden box inside a glass display case and mounted it on a stone pedestal. She surrounded the pedestal with flowers and plants, creating a peaceful and serene space. The garden renovation was complete. From that day forward, the garden became a place of remembrance, a place where the Abernathy family was never forgotten. And Agnes, the little doll who had carried a secret message for nearly a century, became a symbol of love, hope, and the enduring power of the past. The secret was out. The garden was complete. The story was done. The Abernathy family had been remembered. Years passed. Ben grew up, often visiting the memorial garden to remember Thomas and Lily. He brought friends and told them the story of Agnes, the doll who carried a secret message for nearly a century. He understood the importance of preserving the past and honoring those who came before him. Emily and David continued to care for the house and garden, always mindful of its history. They often imagined Thomas and Lily playing in the garden, their laughter echoing through the years. One day, Ben came to visit with a special surprise. He had been researching the Abernathy family and had discovered that Thomas and Lily had living descendants. He had contacted them and invited them to visit the old family home. A few weeks later, a car pulled up to the house. An elderly woman stepped out, her eyes filled with tears. It was Thomas's granddaughter, Sarah. Emily and Ben greeted Sarah warmly, welcoming her to the house that had once belonged to her family. They showed her the memorial garden, the photograph of Thomas and Lily, and the message hidden inside Agnes. Sarah was deeply moved by the tribute to her ancestors. She had never known much about Thomas and Lily, but she felt an immediate connection to them as she learned about their lives and their love for each other. "This is amazing," Sarah said, her voice filled with emotion. "Thank you for preserving their memory." Sarah spent the afternoon sharing stories about her family, about Thomas's career as a teacher, and about Lily's dedication to nursing. She brought with her old photographs and documents, adding even more to the tribute to the Abernathy family. As the sun began to set, Sarah prepared to leave. She hugged Emily and Ben tightly, thanking them again for their kindness and generosity. "I will never forget this day," Sarah said. "You have given me a gift that I will treasure forever." As Sarah drove away, Emily and Ben stood in the garden, feeling a sense of peace and fulfillment. They had not only honored the memory of Thomas and Lily, but they had also brought their family back together. Agnes, the little doll who had been buried in the garden for nearly a century, had finally fulfilled her purpose. She had connected the past to the present, reminding everyone of the enduring power of love, hope, and the importance of preserving the past. The story of the Abernathy family would continue to be told, inspiring generations to come. The past, present, and future were connected, all because of a little doll named Agnes.